Hey, welcome to the morning show living room live from the top of the Rock, the 72nd floor of 30 Rock. Morning Joe living room.
And I think
we only do this once every 3 or 4 years.
This is the best way to christen Sean Spicer's reign as the incoming White House press secretary.
Very exciting.
Sean, are you excited? Welcome to Morning Joe Christmas edition.
Thank you. And look, it's your background. Oh my God.
But look, your
it's so gaudy. I love it. You've got some really good socks.
No, they don't work.
All right. So let's ask you about, and you have to keep a straight face while we're asking you these questions. Dressed like, I mean, because look at Nick's socks. I mean, who can keep a straight face with Nick's socks?
Sean's socks are also
Bush socks. They're available at the GOP store, www.gop.com.
I will actually make sure all my children get that. We'll go in line afterwards.
How much has changed since we last saw you in this building? And you took us back into like a little closet and said, look, we've got some good data. We think we could do well.
This is the morning of the election. Everybody said you guys were going to lose. You showed us data that actually showed you guys were going to win.
Yeah. And we won big.
Yeah. Bigger than you expected.
Bigger than we expected. I think bigger than most people expected. But I think there was a message that resonated with the American people. And, I mean, you saw Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Michigan, states that hadn't gone red since 1980s.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things that people have to remember is that Donald Trump's speaking to something that most people haven't gotten. He understands the frustration, the anger, the concerns that many Americans haven't been able to voice in decades.
Yeah. Let's talk about the tweet yesterday, obviously causing a lot of concern in the foreign policy community about nuclear weapons. There seemed to be a bit of a clarification that came out later on that you're not talking about expanding the nuclear arsenal. Donald Trump wasn't talking about that, but modernizing the nuclear arsenal.
Well, but there's another piece of this, which is unless other countries need to understand that if they expand their nuclear capabilities, this president's not going to sit back. He's going to act.
Are you talking specifically about Russia, Putin yesterday?
Well, there's a couple countries there's a few countries around the globe, Russia being one of them, China, others that have talked about increasing their nuclear capabilities. Right. I think the president-elect's point is unless these guys come to their senses and recognize that this is not a smart move, increasing the nuclear stockpile around the globe is not good for anybody, but the U.S. is not going to sit back.
But this was a reaction to what Putin said earlier
Look,
today,
it's not it's a point that he's making, which is domestically and internationally, business as usual is over. This guy is going to bring real change, and that means that if our partners around the globe think the U.S. is going to sit back, they're sadly mistaken.
And that includes Vladimir Putin, whether
that includes
it's a partner
everyone
or an enemy. Again, this was a response. I mean, this was a response to what Putin said a couple hours earlier, right?
Well, like I said, I think it's putting every nation on notice that the United States is going to reassert its position in the globe. Make sure that if you act, the United States is going to act.
Okay, so let's talk also about you and I growing up with presidents named Bush.
Right.
And in the transition, the presidents named Bush quietly helped the person who defeated them or the person who was replacing them and stayed off the stage publicly and let them do their business. Shouldn't Donald Trump follow the same example of George H.W. Bush and George W. Bush and even what Barack Obama is doing right now?
Well, no. I think this is a guy who made it very clear to the campaign that on every aspect of policy, he's not going to sit back and just wait.
But he's not president yet.
Right,
I know. There's only one president.
Look at what he's gotten done, whether it's the deal with Carrier, the Boeing costs on Air Force One, the F-35 costs on the F-35. He brought down the cost for $1 billion without doing with these simple meetings.
He's not president yet.
And he's getting results. I mean, internationally and domestically, he's not going to sit back and wait. Now,
what would we say if Barack Obama were doing this to George W. Bush 8 years ago? Let me tell you what I would say. I'd say he needs to sit back. He's being a classless punk. That's what I'd say. That's what all Republicans would say.
But I would argue that he has been very respectful of the idea that we have one president at a time. He has been in constant contact with President Obama, making it clear that what his views are on certain things, and he has been very respectful of the I think President Obama and his team have been extremely gracious to the incoming team, and the relationship has been phenomenal. But look, he's not going to sit back and wait. He's going to get things done.
Well, I'm looking at this from a different angle because I want to speak to a lot of concerns people expressed to me, and The Atlantic, Ronald Brownstein articulates this concern pretty well, saying Trump is making little attempt to reconcile the country. I'll just read a little bit of it. In tone and temperament, the distance between Trump and the president-elect, and Trump, the presidential candidate, has been vanishingly small. He's appointed a cabinet and White House staff that braid the competing factions of the Republican Party but offer virtually no outreach to voters beyond them. His greatest assets remain that he is viewed as embodying change, while many Americans believe the political system desperately needs it. But by all indications, Trump is preparing policy change at home and abroad appropriate to a landslide mandate of support, despite facing skepticism, if not hostility, from more Americans than any recent incoming president. Is there going to be a message of inclusivity, perhaps, on Inauguration Day? Does he feel he needs to do this?
I would argue that he is, from election night forward, he has talked about bringing Americans together. He has been talking about putting America first. He's been talking about American jobs, and he's succeeded in it. And so, with all due respect to Ron, I think there's a lot of folks that still haven't gotten the message that change is coming, and he's done it. But he's been talking about bringing every American
what are the
together.
words that really show an attempt at national reconciliation so that everybody feels like a part of this?
On election night, at 3 a.m., just down the street from here, he stood there and said, I want to be a president for all Americans. Whether you voted for me or not, I want to put American workers first. I want to put American families first. He has been very clear. I don't know, and over again, he's done the same. When he sat with President Obama in the Oval Office, when he made his comments after his meeting on Capitol Hill, he has talked about uniting America, bringing America together and moving it forward, but as an entire country, not whether or not it's. And if you look at the people he's met with, the people that he's appointed, it's Republicans, it's Democrats, it's people that haven't supported him.
For a major cabinet post, though, for a major cabinet post, will he appoint a Democrat to a major cabinet post?
We yet to be determined. We have 4 left, but again, you look at some of the folks that he has appointed. While not necessarily Democrats, they've been people that were opposing him in the primary. Some of them, his political opponents that he's met with. But he's met with Democrats. He has talked to them about embracing the agenda that can move the country forward where there's common ground.
John Meacham, does Sean Spicer know what he's gotten himself into? I mean, historically, all you need to do is read Marlon Fitzwater's book to realize that they don't care who your president is. They kick you in the gut until the moment you walk out of the White House. It's their job.
Yeah, Jim Baker's great line is you got to feed them all the time. They're just always hungry.
So true.
Sean, I was going to ask, I mean, this will be, it's a hard, as Joe says, it's an incredibly difficult job no matter what. But you have a client, you have a principal who may be ahead of you. Usually the agencies or the departments might get out in front of you, but are you going to know when he's tweeting something out? What's the story of...
Yeah, how's that going to work with
Trump tweet president?
Are you getting paid extra? It's basically what we need to know. Combat
hazard pay, yeah.
Look, I think in every aspect, we talked about it, this is going to be a very different presidency than we've seen before, but it's going to be a very effective presidency, and it's going to be a very successful presidency.
Are you going to do daily briefings?
I think so, maybe. I assume so, but we're going to look at everything. And I think you've seen, I think the point that we've been trying to make through this transition is just because it was done a certain way before doesn't mean it's going to happen. I think we need to sit down with folks from the White House press corps. We need to sit down with our team and say, what is the most effective way to communicate messages to the American people?
You guys understand the importance of the press corps?
Oh, absolutely.
So why has it been so long since the president-elect had a press conference with the press?
Well, he just did one the other day, no?
He came out, he talked to the press the other day. He sat down with the New York Times for, what, an hour and a half. He came down the other day and talked to the pool. I mean, look, I get that there's this idea of, sit behind a podium, but the president-elect has been communicating both with the American people directly and with the press corps on a fairly regular basis.
A lot of First Amendment concerns about the president wanting to weaken First Amendment protections for the press.
He's a champion. I mean, look at his use of the First Amendment. He loves the First Amendment.
He does love the First Amendment. So again, for those who have expressed that concern that he would want to weaken the First Amendment, weaken Sullivan v. New York Times, are you saying that's not anything
No. I think there is a concern by some in the mainstream media that he has this ability to communicate directly to the American people via Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. But he respects and understands the role of a press in our democracy. The difference is that I think for the first time, a lot of folks in the media haven't been called out the way they have when their stories have been wrong or when their opinions have gotten in the way of the facts. So he's going to be very forceful. He's going to be, but he understands the role of the press, and we are going to enjoy having him and communicating on a daily basis.
You getting ready to move to Washington?
I live in Washington.
Okay,
so
you got your family
I'm lucky to move back.
Oh, right.
Well, let me just say that we understand all the mistakes that we've made over the campaign, and that's why we're ending the year trying to be as serious and forthright and,
right there.
and sober as humanly
totally
possible.
Sober. We're all sober.
Would you like some eggnog?
I think I'm good for now.
Really,
But thank you.
it's strong.
I know. I've got a long day ahead of me.
Where are you going next? Where are you going next?
Small little network.
Yeah. Do you need any? I've got slippers. You need some slippers?
I'm good, thank you.
Why don't you bring those to Matt?
Okay, I'll do that.
Very good. All right, John Spicer, thank you.
guys.
Congratulations.
Merry Christmas.
I don't
Thank you,
know.
Sean.
I don't know if I should say
Glad you don't have to
congratulations or
move.
condolences.
No, you should say congratulations.
Have you read?
This is a huge honor.
Have you read Marlon Fitzwater's book yet?
It's next on the list.
You need to read Marlon Fitzwater's book. It is.
But it is.
A
I will
warning.
say this. This is an unbelievably humbling experience, and I cannot thank the president-elect for this honor. It's to be able to play this role. It's a very, very small club, and I can't thank him enough for this honor.
2 words.